All right, brother. How goes it?
It was pretty okay today, Pat. Feeling pretty good. Had a excellent lunchtime jiu-jitsu session today. It was a fun one. Sometimes you're the hammer, sometimes you're the nail. Today I was
That's what
the
I was going to
hammer,
ask.
so so
Okay, all right, good.
it was a good day. Yeah.
I might have asked you this before. Do you have a go-to submission that's you're the
You know,
most capable or confident in?
it varies. Like you kind of go through periods of time, but right now the old school bread and butter triangle choke and the old school bread and butter head and arm have been the go-tos.
Okay,
Yeah.
they're paying the bills.
And I've gone so far as to build a physical manifestation of some smack talk. I don't know if I've talked about this on the podcast or not before, but I built a little box like out of like nice wood and like
Oh,
spent way too much time doing it.
yeah,
And then
yeah.
I filled it with these little really nicely finished triangles and I give them out as tokens. And I encourage others to do the same so that you just get a little take home if you get got.
That's pretty legit. I could see that being actually like just becoming a cool thing that people enjoy, and they
It's a
get
good time.
um, you know,
Hey, if you can't talk smack with your training partners, I feel like you're in the wrong gym, whether that's a CrossFit gym or a BJJ gym or wherever. You know what I mean? There has to
a
be a little
hundred
friendly
percent.
banter, in my opinion. That's part of it.
100%. Anybody who's followed the show knows that I've been trying for a couple of years now to just blow the dust off any one of my hobbies outside of just kids and work. And I've just been an epic failure. So as we record this, it's early February. I got all fired up in January. I'm like, I'm going to get the old bow out and start shooting again. And found a local range and reached out to like an instructor and like a little back and forth. I'm like, yeah, we'll circle back on a weekend so I can get an hour of instruction. Never circled back, life just so anyway, I gotta do that. And then two quick just like life things, one fitness related, one not fitness related at all, before we get into the topic today. Is I don't know how much I've shared because I share stuff with you when the camera's not on. I can't remember what I've shared when the camera is on, but
Same.
for anyone who's out there. My daughter just had to have some surgery, nothing crazy, but she had to have her tonsils and adenoids removed. And first of all, I didn't realize how long and nasty that recovery was going to be. But it's 2 weeks of pretty miserable recovery. They can't swallow, they can't drink, they can't eat, so they're grouchy, unhappy. It affects sleeping. So from that, and she needed alternating between these meds every 3 hours. So for a decent period of time, either my wife or myself, we were up every 3 hours giving her something. So sleep was just totally in the toilet. And then in that 14-day recovery window, the doctor said, like, hey, this is super common surgery. It goes well the overwhelming majority of the time. The only thing you really want to be like, keep a lookout for is if you see blood coming out of the mouth. That ain't supposed to happen. That only happens in like, I don't know, they said like 3 to 5% of the time. Some very, very, very low time. They're like, not a concern. Don't worry about it, but just keep it in the, and they're like, if you see that, that's an immediate go to the emergency room. So I was like, all right, duly noted. And we were doing great. And like around day 10, she came bursting in my room at like 1 in the morning, blood coming out of her mouth, trouble breathing, which is a crappy way for everyone to wake up. And I was terrified. So that was back to the hospital. We spent that whole night in the emergency room for like from like midnight to 9 a.m. the next morning, not sleeping. Came home wrecked. So I guess my point is the last 2 weeks have been like terrible sleep, real life terrible sleep. And so the only day I missed a workout was one day that was the initial day of her surgery because we had to be at the hospital in the room at like 8 a.m. So it was a very early morning. And we were there all day long, overnight, as a matter of fact. But I just want to let people know, like, hey, life throws stuff at you. I have not set anything near a PR in the last 2 weeks. Okay. I mean, far, far from it. I've been operating on like my tank is on empty, lethargic zombie. And so I've just wandered into the garage, given myself a ton of leeway and grace. The strike zone has been very wide, modified the loads as needed. I would say I'm being conservative. I bet at least half the time, if not more like 70% of the time, the clock didn't go on. There was going to be no comparison being the thief of joy. I just
Yep.
did the thing And then I walked back inside. I did some back squats the other day. It felt like I had the world on my back on a load that I shouldn't have. It's just one of those deals. And it's like, you know what? Stacking bricks, it's all good. Eventually the sleep will come back. And so for anybody out there, if you find yourself in one of those situations, it's okay. Just do what you got to do to keep being consistent, and that might be getting sleep and not working out. I'm a bit of a weirdo, but just real life strikes us all. That's kind of the point of my little topic there.
Yep. Better to be prepared for it when it does. I mean, that's the name of the game, right? And I think that's maybe tangentially related to what we're going to talk about today. But to me, it's always one of those like, man, could you imagine the alternative? Yeah,
Yeah, oh yeah.
it sucks to come back and have a week or two where you kind of feel like you're climbing out of the hole. But could you imagine having to go through like a difficult life event like that and you're not well prepared?
Mm-hmm.
Your fitness is already kind of on the precipice of being not so healthy. I mean, man, it just compounds things. Or I guess I imagine that it compounds things to be even worse. Like you're just not as tolerant to the ups and downs of life.
On a side note, it's so crazy how now it's not impossible, I get it, but how difficult it is, at least where I was, to eat well in a hospital
Oh
cafeteria.
goodness, don't get me started.
It
Yeah,
was crazy. Like don't get me wrong.
sure.
There were
You
there were
know,
selections that I could make, but I didn't feel like walking in at dinner time and getting like a couple prepackaged hard-boiled eggs for dinner. Like I wanted something that was actually like warm and prepared, and all the warm prepared stuff was delicious. Don't get me wrong, but it was like a grease calorie bomb that was like, okay, I guess this is what we're doing.
yeah, don't get me started. Similarly, this is a Mick Bosman's blood boil type situation. You know, not to go too far into my kind of family things going on here, but elder care is another one of those situations where it is staggering to me how much you are paying on a monthly basis to care for your loved
Mm,
ones and just the absolute slop that ends up being served. It's like, how is this not the fundamental thing that my money is going towards? It should be one of the three pillars. It's like, I need a stable environment, I need a good, clean place to be, and I need a good, solid food schedule. But man, that
mhm.
just seems to be the lowest priority. I cannot understand it. It's truly baffling to me, especially
Okay,
when you price tag associated with it. It's just nuts.
this is the last thing I'll say, and maybe it relates to you saying the price tag associated with it. Again, the last not fitness thing. I'm just going to throw this out there, and you and I can talk about it more offline.
Yeah.
I don't know how I got this in my head recently, but I was like, you know what? I'm gonna I'm gonna purchase a wristwatch,
Hmm,
not a fitness tracker,
sure.
not a wearable device, nothing connected to the internet, old school like a mechanical watch.
Yep.
It's probably I was just unaware, my friend. It's probably like everything else, whether you're a runner, you're into kettlebells, like the world of watches. I had no idea. I've been going down some rabbit holes for the last 10 days. I now have no idea what to buy. Like there's so many options and this like and in price points and all these things and like I have no clue what to buy. So for anybody watching or listening, if you are a watch person, leave something in the comment. I want to recommend recommendations for just a mechanical watch, understated, nothing fancy, stainless steel. Let me know, and that's that. So, dude, we'll talk offline. There's some crazy stuff out there. So,
It's
so,
like any subculture, Pat. Like the more you take a look at different subcultures, the more you recognize the common
oh my
in them. And
goodness.
yeah, there's just black holes to get sucked into in
Strong
any culture.
opinions and
Oh yeah, sure.
oh, and this
Yep.
means this and that. I was like, oh my goodness, I thought it was just a watch. You came up with the question topic today, so maybe we ought to dance
Sure.
around to that. What did you where are we going?
Well, I thought it would be interesting, Pat, if we just talked about fitness, but applied completely outside the gym. So I know this is kind of something that comes up from time to time. But I thought, hey, what are the most surprising places that you found your fitness to be really helpful? Or maybe you've developed an attribute that you didn't think you had, but when it was called on outside the gym, it just happened to be there. Um, and it wasn't immediately obvious when you're doing thrusters and muscle ups day to day in the garage or at the affiliate. I think
Okay.
that anybody who's done a program like CrossFit long enough, especially if they get into it and they're into the philosophy and they understand that like the whole point is to be well rounded, you kind of internalize that. But then you get into it like we're talking about. It becomes a hobby. You do the thing
Mhm.
to do the thing, and you kind of lose sight of that what happens outside the gym until you can no longer avoid that, and you get put into a situation like you were talking about earlier, maybe. You have some family stuff going on, and you just kind of have to tap into those reserves. But on a long enough timeline, I think everybody who trains in this manner has one of those kind of surprising moments where they find themselves outside the gym. They didn't expect to be in the circumstance that they were, and they have this reserve of like, oh wow, that just kind of popped up, and I didn't even know that I was developing this specifically, but I'm sure glad that I spent all those times, grinding it out, early mornings, late nights, whatever it might be. So I thought
Okay.
it'd just be kind of fun to riff on that because I have a couple, and
I
like I
I'm
was
cu
saying, go ahead.
I say I'm curious now that you've fleshed it out a bit more.
Yeah.
I think I potentially may have missed the mark in
Oh,
what I have. Are you talking about a workout that caught you off guard, or like a real world use of your fitness?
real world use of your fitness. Yeah.
Okay, all right. I think okay. Then I think I'm doing okay. I think I'm
Yeah.
doing okay. Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
And I was saying that, we kind of batted this topic around briefly. Uh, Sounds like I wasn't super articulate when I sent it to you, but I was writing down a few things that came to mind kind of recently, and it's funny because I can categorize them all kind of generally, and it's not what I would think about when I think about
Okay,
CrossFit training in general. So I
okay.
thought that was kind of interesting, and I don't mean to be cryptic. We'll get to the punchline there in a minute, but
If
yeah,
you've got a few, maybe you should stop. I have
okay,
one that is like this one sticks out in my head as like the difficult day, and then I've got a couple like just little quips, but one is like my boom kind of a deal. So
yeah.
if you've got a few, maybe you should say one of them.
Okay, well, I'll start with one that's kind of a fun anecdote. This was a couple years ago, and I'm actually out on my at my barn right now. And about 100 feet that way out the door, there's a big fire pit that we use for social events and things like that. And that was my wife's idea. She's like, "Hey, I really feel like we should go dig a fire pit." In fact, the way she phrased it was, "I want to dig a hole. I want to dig a fire pit." And I was like, "Great, let's go." So we come out, and we
She
dig
comes
this.
out with one shovel.
Yeah, pretty much. So we come out, and she's like, "Okay, this is where we're going to put it. This is approximately how deep it needs to be." Starts marking it out, and she's getting to work with the shovel. Cool. I would say it took her 20 minutes to get this, moderately sized. It's a pretty big fire pit, but it's not super deep. And I mean, let's face it, it's not a crazy involved project. No problem. Now, here's where the problem came in: is that we needed to ring it with something, and the only thing available were rocks down on the tree line. My property is pretty topographically aggressive. There's some flat spots, but most of the stuff that you're going to source for a fire pit is way down the hill. And I knew that this was coming, so I just started
Mm.
pulling up these big rocks from the tree line to ring the fire pit. And the joke is like my wife's like, "Oh, start the fire pit," and 20 minutes later she's done, and for the next 2 hours I'm hauling rocks up from the from the tree line. But the moral of the story is I did that for fun. And it was fun to be able to like support my wife's little project there. And it turned out great. And it's been a permanent fixture in our little property hosting series for a long time now, a couple of years. And I look back on that, and it's not like I'm some super macho, super strong dude, but it wasn't even a question that I could just
Mm.
get to work and get moving on a project like that with awkward objects over a long period of time.
That's good, honest work right there.
Yep. And the thing that always surprises me about tasks like that when they come up is that the next day or two, I don't really feel that beat up, to be
Mm.
perfectly honest. Like you definitely feel the work, but it's not like, oh man, I got to stop everything and lick my wounds.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
when I have situations like that pop up, it's always a good reminder that like, oh yeah, this is making you capable.
Yeah, the first one that pops into my mind is somewhat related to that as well. Being it's just outdoor work, so we
Yep.
live on a few acres of property, and where we're situated here in Washington State, I don't know, it is geographically unique where it's situated with regards to the Cascade Mountains. because we get like this nasty wind only during the winter, but it can get, I mean, significant, lot of down trees and damage, stuff like that. To let you know just how strong of a wind we're talking about, a couple years ago, I was here in my home office when I heard this, like, it was in a heck of a windy day, this like crazy crash, like sounded like on my house. And I was like, what is that? I went outside and the wind had ripped one of the skylights off of my house. And anyone who hasn't moved a skylight, they're just huge, heavy pieces of metal and glass and just like tossed it all there. So we get that every now and then. We get a lot of down trees. And so my first one of just using the fitness is it's not uncommon for there to be a really big, huge tree just down. And then I just got to get out there with the chainsaw. And it's just multiple hours of trimming, cutting, shimming, hauling, dragging, moving, just all by my lonesome until
Yep.
it's all done. Awkward, bending, grabbing, rolling, like all kind, things that I don't do in the gym. I don't, roll and just, things like that. And it's, hard and tough and a good day's work. And I sleep well that night, but I've yet to, regardless of the size of the tree, the amount of work, or Lord knows how much it all weighs, all cut up and get moved, it all gets done, and it gets done just based upon, me walking into the gym, warming up, and then most workouts taking, anywhere from 12 to 25 minutes, and that's it,
Yeah.
and that has just incredible transference. So number one for me is just down trees on property, 100%
Yeah.
windstorm stuff.
Man, I just had a round of that recently. We had these big ice storms in Nashville, and it was just nuts, trees exploding everywhere. So I just lived that life. I actually helped a friend clear out some of his yard. Then I did a bunch of stuff on my property. And so I had a couple days there of pretty intense work like that. And it is fun, but man, the good thing about it is it's all linear and it's all in the right position and everything just kind of,
Yeah, exactly. I'm always terrified because again, I know just enough with the chainsaw to get it done. But there's some times where I'm like, I can't tell if this is going to snap back on me, and just give it a taste, give it a touch, give it a touch. You're like, okay, it hasn't bitten the bar yet, okay, but yeah, hey, all my fingers and all my toes. So far,
yeah.
so good. So what's your next one?
My second one was a couple years ago. I have a good friend and he's really into archery and bow hunting and that sort of thing. And he has really tried to push me to get into it. And I'm grateful for his guidance and his generosity. He's actually lent me a bow. It's sitting over here. And it's just one of those things like you just can't have all the hobbies that you'd like sometimes. But one of the things that he did when he first set me up with this, and again, this is going back a couple of years now, is he said, "Hey, I want to do this event called the Total Archery Challenge, and they have them around the country periodically, and it's basically like a big, like half. I would describe it as a camp out archery shoot and kind of trade show. They have all these different vendors that show up, and so if you're into hunting and things like that, you can go and buy stuff from these guys, and then you can camp out on site. And what they do is they find properties where they can set up hiking routes throughout the property. And they'll have, depending on the size of that property, I don't know, 5 to 15 different routes that you can do. And it's almost like setting a tea time. You and your group decide which routes you'd like to do on which days because it's a multi
Hmm.
thing. And, each of them have very different distance and varied terrain. But the commonality is within the trail, there's like 20 to 25 targets or something as you're hiking along. So it might be a 3 or 4 mile hike. And every couple hundred yards, you're going to encounter a target that you got to stop, shoot into the woods. And then, you score yourself on accuracy with your group,
This
collect
sounds
your
like a blast.
and move on. It really was. It was a great time. And so I had trained up a little bit with the bow for that, but I didn't know how I was going to respond to doing a couple days like this. Long and the short of it was a blast to get out there and do the hiking. I never had to worry about like the packing in, packing out, hiking around. But the thing that surprised me the most was that, hey, look, I'm not great with a bow, but I feel like my accuracy, as questionable as it was, didn't really diminish from the
Ah, yeah, okay.
end. It stayed pretty steady, regardless of my fatigue level, regardless of time of day, and for an amateur who's like, I'm not good at this. It was just something I did because it was fun to do with my friends. I was really surprised at how consistent I could remain even though I'm not trying to say I was great, it
Mhm.
was just like, yeah,
Right.
I was pretty steady given my skill set at that time. And the fatigue didn't really seem to be a big factor in that, where I would have expected, like, by the end of the day, I would have just been shooting into the tree lines and, focus would be all
Mhm.
over the place. But that was not the case. So that was a little bit surprising. The hiking and keeping up with the group, I wasn't so concerned about that anyway. But the transference to a skill that wasn't really developed for me, it was relatively new, but it still preserved itself throughout that event. That was surprising to me. And I do think that that was because my fitness level gave me that buffer. So a little
Nice.
surprising to me. Yeah.
Nice. I've got my one big story here, which I think everyone will get a kick out of. But what popped in my mind just before this, which is a quick one, which was a few years ago, the family and I were on vacation in Coronado, California, I think just to escape some cold weather here in Washington State. And I got connected with a buddy who still works at the Naval Special Warfare Base down there in Coronado, where the SEALs train, they get buzzed and all that stuff. And he was able to just pull some strings. I'm a civilian now, and he got me and my boys, and we went on to the obstacle course
Oh,
there.
fun.
And I've done that. I did the obstacle course a long time ago, like before the year 2000. We're talking, so it's been quite a bit. And was able, and I'm just CrossFitter, and I was able, and I don't do a whole bunch of these obstacles, in my garage any day, but was able just to, make my way and cruise through the obstacle course again, much, much older than I was back then and not having touched an obstacle course. And it was good to go. I was like, that's nice to know that that's just still there. And so
Mhm.
that's a quick side note. But the one, boss, the one, when I think of like potentially the hardest day of manual labor I've ever had in my entire life, this was also kind of similar to your story, bestowed upon me because of my wife. She says something just so innocent one day when we moved into this house, which was, I don't know, like 8 years ago. We've been here a couple years. After a couple years here, she goes, "We should get the boys a basketball hoop. They like to play basketball." I'm like, makes sense, right? They're not on their screens. They're outside. It's like, sure, grab a basketball hoop. I'm thinking you might get one that, like, it's got that little plastic base you fill with water, and every time there's a windstorm, it tips over. I forget about it. A couple weeks later, like an 18 wheeler pulls up in front of my house, and some guy, gets out with like the mechanical lift and all this stuff. I'm like, what in the world is coming to my house on like two pallets? Anyway, she got this hoop. I looked up the specs today so people wouldn't think that I was lying. She got this hoop. Um, it's NBA regulation. Okay, you it has to get you have to pour concrete into the earth, a massive amount of concrete, sink these bolts into it. You're going to bolt this thing. It doesn't, I mean, it is permanent once it goes there. The upright, okay, you think of like a basketball hoop, the upright is like, I don't know, like the size of a coffee cup. The upright is 8-inch by 8-inch steel. It
Nice.
it has a full lifetime warranty. You are authorized to dunk on it and try to break it if you want. It says this in the warranty. Lifetime warranty on you can dunk and you can hang on the rim as much as you want. Try your best. That's how
Nice.
robust this thing is built. It weighs the all the stuff I looked it up today. It weighs 760 pounds.
Awesome.
Okay? I'm flipping through the directions and I have to dig a hole. I don't have an excavator. It's got a shovel. I'm supposed to dig a hole 5 feet deep
Oof, boy.
into the ground and 30 inches wide.
Dang. Yeah.
So I got my wheelbarrow, my shovel, and I had a little Toyota Tacoma at the time, and I went and bought a bunch of bags of concrete. And all I had to mix the concrete was like, one of those little cheap plastic trays and like a hoe, my garden hose. So anyway, I dug this stupid hole in the ground. I was exhausted by the time I finished the hole. I'm only 5'8". I'd stand, it was in my shoulders when I was standing in the ground. You could only see my head in the ground, which made me think every time I saw a movie where they like buried a body in the woods and they like dug a grave in like two hours. I'm like, that's not how that's going. It was all day long in the scorching sun. And of course, after a while, the hole is not wide enough after you get down to use a shovel. I'd use like a post hole digger to like just
Oh
dig
yeah.
this hole. So this motion for like 8 continuous hours, I had like rhabdo in my entire upper body. When I so day one was just digging this blessed hole. I dug the hole all day long. I slept like the dead. I get up the next day, and that was like pour concrete, sink the holes day, sink the bolts in it, the base plate. Um, my Tacoma is just riding on the springs after going to Home Depot to get all the concrete to fill this stupid hole. I tried to do some math and to figure out how many bags of concrete I would need. I was woefully wrong. I mixed and poured concrete in the hole all day long. That hole took 36 bags of concrete. Each
It-
bag weighed 80 pounds. It wasn't
yeah.
like it was an 80-pound bag of concrete times 36 bags. So I had to move each one of those individually, pour it, and then with a hoe, like mix each one of these stupid bags, pour it into the hole, dude, and then put this upright. Anyway, I don't know how I did it. It was so unsafe. It was all by myself. I went into my garage. I had like plyo boxes stacked on top of each other with like ratchet straps, and I backed my truck in. I don't know how I didn't kill myself or break something, but I got the thing all set up. And unlike your story where you felt pretty good the next day, I was sore in the weirdest places from that stupid post hole digger and like bending over with a hoe for like 9 hours one day. I was absolutely destroyed. I was successful. I did it, but that basketball hoop will be here unless there's a nuclear attack. I mean, that
I
thing
was
is
gonna
not
say
going
it's
anywhere.
gonna outlast the house.
I
That'll be
mean,
generations.
it
Yeah.
is, and like in our neighborhood, um, if we like meet people and they feel like, oh, where do you live? What's your address? And somebody be like, the house with the hoop? That's what they'll say. The house with the basketball. I'm like, yes, the one that like Shaquille O'Neal could dunk on if he wanted to. Yes, that's our driveway. So yep, that's what we got.
Monolith. You just have
Yep,
a monolith. I love it.
dude, that was that was an experience, and it get presented by a simple statement from my wife. We should get the boys a basketball hoop. Yeah, we should. So
Seems innocent enough.
now
Yeah.
they got one.
There you go. Well, I don't have another specific anecdote. I have like one more kind of sort of general thing, and then just to tie it all together, like a real general observation after kind of reflecting on this a little bit. But my first was it has to do with regulating yourself after like an extreme situation.
Hmm.
And to me, this is something that it doesn't come up very often, but it is interesting when it does. And so the ones that come to mind that are like really top of mind, you and I both ridden motorcycles for a long time. We both have our fair share of situations we've been in. Yours are a little more extreme than mine. Knock on wood that stays
Sure.
the same. But I've had enough close calls where you really respect the road. And
Hmm.
after one of those close calls, I mean, there can be some pretty elevated heart rates. Your respiration rate is kind of going through the roof, and you're like all fired up, like cylinders just going. The amount of time it takes to regulate back to a normal state always surprises me at how quickly I can kind of get back down to like, okay, I got my faculties back.
Mm.
I'm kind of back in my body again. This was a real sketchy situation. I can recognize it for what it was, but now we're back and we can make a good decision and figure out what the next step is. Um, Observationally, being around people that don't train or don't expose themselves to like physical hardship on the regular, I do not see that same kind of fast regulation in an extremely stressful situation.
I buy that.
And I don't know, like I don't have the studies to back that up as to why or how that's related to fitness, but I am 100% convinced that if you are not in good shape, there will be a time that you are confronted with some sort of stress, whether it's physical or otherwise, and you just do not regulate nearly as well as you could if you were a little bit more exposed to some physical
Oh
difficulty.
yeah,
So,
I buy that, man. It's just like, as you get fitter, faster, and stronger and better conditioned, if you kept the workout the same, it was like interval work with set rests, you would get back down to homeostasis quicker as you became more and more conditioned, so I buy that 100%.
Yeah. So that's just an interesting observation and something, again, I 100% tie it back to being fit and being fit for a lifetime, even though it doesn't seem to be something that most people are probably training for when they're actually in the gym. But
Hmm.
that was one that popped out. You have anything
Yeah.
else? You want me to hit my generality here?
No, I'm trying to think. Not really. Again, it's just everything. Yeah, hit the obstacle course, the basketball hoop, the work around the yard. No, I think that's about it.
Yeah, cool. Well, so my last thing that kind of ties it all together when I think about all these kind of different, you know, elements that surprise me, honestly, the common thread is that it has to do with stamina and endurance in most cases.
Mm,
Most of the time when I'm caught outside the gym and it's like, okay, I got to rely on my fitness, it's something that's going to be a grind. And it's never, I mean, maybe it's something you don't want to be doing. Maybe it's not the favorite thing for you to be doing, but it's never an issue. And that's
right,
what I think is interesting because, most people looking at CrossFit, they're not going to consider it a traditional endurance program. And certainly if you're talking about like, hey, how's your marathon time or,
right,
something like that, it's probably not going to be the first thing that you're looking to train. However, when it comes to kind of the real world application of just grinding something out, it's never failed me. And that I think is really interesting because I'm not really interested in doing 90-minute sessions, 2 hour sessions. I never have been. I don't think that's in the cards for me anytime soon. And yet, it's always been in the back pocket and it's never been something that I've had to worry about when it does present itself. So to me, that's kind of the most surprising thing. It's like, hey, well, to your point, most of the workouts I'm doing these days are like 30 minutes or less. We're
mhm.
talking get in, warm up, get it done, get back to work somewhere else. It's not something that's taking a long time. And yet, even recently, we had that big ice storm, like I was saying, we're clearing trees, doing whatever. It's a whole day's worth of work. Eh, it's fine. So that endurance kind of ability always surprises me when it comes back around because it is not how I train in the gym. And yet there it is.
Yeah, it is the endurance ability, and like what you said, whether it's the moving the stones for 2 hours, or that stupid thing I did with the basketball hoop, the 2 days of manual labor, or whatever it happened to be. Yes, they're long grinds, and they obviously require you to contract your muscles and to exchange oxygen. Like, yeah, they obviously do. But at some point, I think it's yes, the physical fitness that you do every day in the gym has to be helpful. But I wonder if it's also the part of, since you do walk into the gym and you don't have to walk in for 90 minutes, you regularly just make yourself do something difficult. Like the between the ears component as well, where like, it's not like you sit on your tail, you don't work out, you're a total couch potato, and then a hard task comes up twice a year and you're like, what was that? Like you're regularly exerting yourself to some way, shape, or form. And if every now and then you're like, all right, I'm used to doing hard things, this is going to be hard things for a couple of hours. All right, this is going to suck, but let's
Yeah.
do it. There's probably something to, you never let too much rust get on you. Even if
Yeah.
you're not
Fair.
operating at like your peak that you've ever been, you're keeping the ball moving, and that probably keeps that feeling of dealing with discomfort. You're kind of familiar with it, and there's a big benefit in that.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if you've experienced this too, but when you do get faced with those kind of longer days where you're doing something maybe you're not wanting to be doing, but you have to, I'm not going to say it doesn't feel hard because obviously there's an effort that goes along with that type of work. But I'll say, man, it's never a question like, can I do one more trip with the wheelbarrow,
Right.
whatever?
Yeah.
Because in my mind, I believe it's because the intensity that you're working with when you're doing the typical CrossFit gym, you don't even come close to that on these longer efforts. And so, like I said, it's not that it's easy, but man, as far as the perception is concerned, it's like, no big deal. This is not
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
burn it down type
Like,
of thing.
my back after working with that stupid hoe or shovel for so long might have felt like there was an ice pick in it just from, like, the
Sure.
thousands of repetitive movements, like, there was discomfort in that, but I could always do it, and no point of that 2 days of labor felt anything like the round of 15 in Fran.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
not by a long shot.
Yeah.
Like I was like, there's 100 things I'd rather be doing than this, but let's get this stupid hoop in the ground.
Yeah.
So that was about it. But yeah, no, that was a hey, real life, right? That's why we're
Yeah.
doing it. It's you
Absolutely.
you and
And
I.
I'd be really interested. I especially if you've been doing CrossFit for a while, think about it a little bit. Try to rack your brain for a circumstance that you found yourself in. And I mean, the obvious go-to is like, hey, someday of real hard physical work, but see if there's something in there that kind of surprised you a little bit. All the listeners out there, because surely there are some unique things that people have encountered that if they were
Mm.
less fit, they would have been a much bigger deal. And it's only in retrospect that you're like, oh man, that actually wasn't as bad as it could have been because I was prepared in a way that I didn't consider. So I'd love to hear from people on what their experiences are with that.
Well, I guess when you frame it that way as well, what didn't pop into my mind would probably be prepared for surgery, like when I had my total hip
Mhm.
replacement. Like I was probably more prepared than the average bear for that. Came back better than most people because of the fitness bricks have been stacking for a while. So yeah, for sure.
Mm.
All right. Well, hey everybody, we want to know, like Adrian said, does this resonate with you? Find this episode on the btwb YouTube channel. Post your thoughts on this topic, or if you have a question, a topic, or something for a future show, post that there as well. You can also post those things on Instagram on the Very Not Random Instagram account, just as a public comment. Or if you want to be more discreet, you can send a direct message to the Very Not Random Instagram account. All those things make their way back to us and they help drive the program forward. So for Adrian Bosman, I'm Pat Sherwood, and we will see you next time.